This is the guess and check method of factoring. I kind of made up that name, but you'll see why we call it that. And we'll just go ahead and get right into our first example. So we're going to use x squared plus 4x plus 3. So this is a pretty simple example, but that's why I wanted to start out with it. So whenever you're using the guess and check method, really what you're doing is if you have ax squared plus bx plus c, which is of course what we have over here. So we're trying to find out what does a times c equal, which in this case will be 3. And then what is b, which in our case is 4. And then we need a number that adds to be 4 and multiplies to be 3. So this is pretty similar to some of the other methods I did with the factor by grouping, but this one's just not quite as rigorous as where you have to do the same thing every single time. So we're just thinking of numbers. Like I said, this one's a pretty easy one. Trying to think of numbers that multiply and add to be this. So of course it's going to be 1 and 3 is going to work for both of them. And then all you want to do is you want to say x plus whatever's here, and then x plus whatever's here. So if that were a negative 3, then it'd be x minus 3. If that was a negative 1, it'd be x minus 1. Then to finish it up, you just want to multiply these out and make sure they work. So we say x squared plus 3x plus x plus 3, which gives us x squared plus 4x plus 3. So we know that works. And like I said, that was an easier one. We'll do a more difficult one right now. So let's try x squared minus 3x minus 28. So of course we're looking for, in this case again we have a positive 1 here, so we're looking for something that multiplies to be negative 28 and adds to be negative 3. So it adds to be that b that we have right here, and of course you take the negative with it. So the reason this one's a little more difficult is because we don't know exactly what to start with, but basically you're going to look for the factors of this 28 right here. So we know it's not going to be 1 and 28 because there's no way that's going to add up, even if you do the negative 1 or negative 28, it's going to add to be negative 3. You know it's not going to be 2 because it's not going to give us a big enough number. So in this one you can either do it mentally with a calculator, you can write them off to the side, but it's going to end up being 4 and negative 7. And then of course the same for the next one. So with this method you don't always have to write it out like this. This is just a good way to get started. Typically I would only use the guess and check for simpler problems. We're about to do one that'll be a little bit more difficult. But for this one would probably be a good candidate for the guess and check, because now we just say we got x plus 4, x minus 7. We multiply these back together, we get x squared, not plus, minus 7x plus 4x minus 28. And then we add those together, we get x squared minus 3x minus 28. So let's try a little bit more difficult one. Let's do 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. So what makes this more difficult is the fact that this is a 2 here and not just a positive 1. So what that means for whenever we're solving this problem is we have to do our a times our c. So in this case we need what multiplies to be negative 6, still adds to be our 5. So then we just kind of go through the factors of, whatever's here. Obviously the factors of 3 aren't going to work because that's just 1 and 3. So we go through the factors of negative 6, 1 and 6 is what we're going to need. We just got to make sure we write that correctly. We need a negative 6, so one of these numbers has to be negative, but we're ending with this positive 5. So that means a larger needs to be positive. So we say negative 1 and 6, you just test it out real quick and say negative 1 times 6 is negative 6, negative 1 plus a positive 6 is a positive 5. So this is where this part gets a little more tricky. Instead of just writing like the last couple of times, or the last two examples, what we did was we would just write x minus 1, x plus 6. But you can see that that's not going to work out, because then you would say x times x is x squared, and we could stop right there because we know that it needs to be this 2x squared. So we know that's not the right way to do it. So what we have to do is we have to create a ratio. So whatever our a is, I'm just going to write it out up here. So I'll say 2. So this is the ratio that we have to do. So we say -1 and 6. Of course, we get those two numbers from right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to simplify. There's nothing you can pull out of the 2 and the -1, so we just leave it. But we can pull out a 2 from this over here. So we can say this is now 1, this is 3. So all that means is if you multiply 2 times this 1, you get 2, multiply 2 times the 3, you get 6. So all we've done is simplify it. So then what you do is you take, since this one can't simplify anymore, we go and write that as 2x minus 1. This one is now in the simplest form, so we say x plus 3. We say 2x squared plus 6x minus 3. Then you simplify that, you say 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. So that means we got what we started with, which is what our goal was. So we're going to do one last example. We'll do another one where that a is something other than 1. Say 6x squared minus 19x plus 10. So this one would probably not be a great one for the guess and check. And I'm going to use it as an example to show you why it would not be. So we're going to say our a times our c, which is going to give us 60. So we need two things that multiply to be 60. And then add to be -19, because the reason this one probably wouldn't be that great is because it could potentially take you a long time to figure out what it's going to be. But something to kind of simplify, we know that we end with a positive number when we multiply. So that means these two numbers are either both positive or both negative. But if you're going to add to give a negative number, then you know that they cannot both be positive, so we're going to say they're both negative. So I've already done this one, so I'll just go ahead and write out what it is. So we just check it real quick. -4 times -15 gives you a positive 60. -4 plus -15 gives you a -19. So just like we did with the last one, you got to use your ratio method. So we'll say 6 and -4, 6 and -15. So both of these are going to simplify. We can pull a 2 out of both of these. So we'll say 3 and a -2. Just make sure that you're doing that right. You say 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times -2 is -4. So now we can pull something out of this other one as well. So we say that we can pull out a 3 from both of these. So this with a 2 and a -5, and then you just check it real quick. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times -5 is -15. So now we're going to write 3x minus 2, 2x minus 5. We can fold these back together, and we will get 6x squared, which we're on a good track now because there's 6x squared there. Say minus 15x minus 4x plus 10. Add those two in the middle together, you get 6x squared minus 19x plus 10. So like I said, this method is probably not going to be your go-to for whenever your a is not 1. And you can see that in the last two that we've done. The ratio method makes it a little bit longer, whereas suppose if you use factor by grouping or something like that, you can skip that step. But if it's one of the more simple ones, this is also a good way to factor a polynomial.